One day, the US dollars you're holding might lose value faster than you think. And the starting point of that story? A place you've probably never been. The Strait of Hormuz. Roughly 20% of the world's oil flows through this narrow choke point, a strategic corridor heavily influenced by Iran. For years, the story has been told in a very simple way. Iran is the weaker side, opposing the United States, just trying to protect its sovereignty and sell oil on its own terms. But reality is far more complex. Iran doesn't just want to move away from the dollar. They are already doing it, quietly, systematically. This is not a story of good versus evil. This is a story about who is rewriting the rules of global money. To understand why Iran is doing this, you have to go back to an event they have never forgotten. The year is 1953. Operation Ajax, one of the most controversial covert actions of the 20th century. Iran's democratically elected Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh decides to nationalize oil, directly threatening the interests of the Anglo-Iranian oil company, the predecessor of BP. The response from Britain and the United States is swift. The CIA and MI6 orchestrate a coup to remove him. But if you look deeper, this wasn't just about oil. It was the Cold War. Washington feared that a destabilized Iran could drift toward the Soviet Union, another domino that needed to be contained. For the US, it was a strategic move. For Iran, it was a betrayal. Two perspectives, two parallel truths. The Shah was restored to power. Iran modernized rapidly, but also became increasingly dependent and controlled. Until 1979, the Iranian Revolution. This revolution didn't just overthrow a regime. It created an idea that still defines Iran today. Never again will foreign powers decide Iran's destiny. Iran is not trying to defeat the United States directly. They're testing something else. Can the world function without the US dollar? For decades, the global system has run on a simple rule. If you want to buy oil, you need dollars. This is the foundation of the petrodollar system, an unwritten rule that has shaped the global economy. The system hasn't collapsed, but for the first time in decades, it's no longer untouchable. The US dollar is still the world's dominant reserve currency, accounting for about 57% of global foreign exchange reserves. But that's the lowest level since the 1990s. What matters isn't that it still exists, it's that cracks have begun to appear. Iran didn't create these cracks, but they are one of the countries actively trying to widen them, not with speeches, but with actions. Selling oil to China in Yuan, estimated 80 to 90% of Iran's oil exports. Using a shadow fleet, opaque shipping networks. Trading outside Western-controlled financial systems, including through crypto. This isn't a loud revolution, it's a slow erosion, and that's what makes it dangerous. Look at the basic logic. If more oil transactions avoid the dollar, leads to demand for US dollars declines, leads to capital flows back into the US more slowly, leads to inflation pressure and borrowing costs rise over time. Not immediately, but over 10 to 15 years. Many analysts argue this isn't a collapse, but a controlled weakening. The real problem? No one controls how fast the cracks spread. If de-dollarization accelerates, the US economy could be more vulnerable than most people expect, not because it's weak, but because the system it built is too large to unwind smoothly. And Iran is not alone. They are part of a broader trend. BRICS, Russia, China, all exploring ways to reduce dependence on the dollar. This is no longer Iran versus the US. It's part of a larger restructuring of the global financial system. And it doesn't just affect America. It affects inflation, fuel prices, and the money sitting in your bank account. From the perspective of the United States, this is not just an economic issue. It's a survival question. They don't see Iran as a country simply selling oil differently. They see a sanctioned state that still survives, a node in a Russia-China network, a real-world test case for a non-dollar system, and most importantly, a precedent. If Iran succeeds, others may follow. That's why the U.S. response is systemic. Not just sanctions, but financial control, diplomatic pressure, and if necessary, military force. For the U.S., this isn't about Iran. It's about one question. Who controls the rules of the game? So here is the core question. Will the United States allow these cracks to keep growing or not? If they allow it, a new system could gradually emerge over the next 10 to 15 years. If they don't, they may act decisively to stop it early. That's why flashpoints like the Strait of Hormuz are so dangerous, because here, geopolitics and finance are no longer separate. This is not just about oil. It's not just about nuclear weapons. This is about the future of the global monetary system. The petrodollar has not collapsed, but the cracks are real. And Iran is not the only one widening them. The real question is, when those cracks become large enough, who absorbs the damage? So in the end, this isn't just about oil or Hormuz. The cracks are becoming visible. This is about two survival logics colliding. If you were the United States, what would you do? Would you allow these cracks to expand, risking long-term loss of financial dominance, higher inflation, rising debt costs, and a gradual decline in global power? Or would you act now, decisively, through sanctions, military pressure, and diplomacy to defend a system built over decades, even at the risk of regional conflict and global economic instability? And if you were Iran, what would you choose? Would you submit to maximum pressure, abandon nuclear ambitions and alternative payment systems in exchange for economic stability and sanctions relief, even if it means sacrificing true sovereignty and reliving the lessons of 1953? Or would you continue down your current path, using Hormuz as leverage, deepening ties with China and BRICS, knowing that one miscalculation could trigger a blockade, economic collapse, or a war you may not fully win? There are no easy choices, because in this confrontation, power no longer lies in weapons or aircraft carriers. It lies in a much simpler question, one that decides everything. What currency will you trade in? And the answer to that question may shape the future of the global economy. Because if that answer changes, then the story you heard at the beginning about the dollars in your pocket may no longer be hypothetical.